Brooklyn, why don't you come on up here and have a seat? This is Brooklyn Donnigan, everybody. And we're just going to have a little chat. We are so glad to welcome you to our church. Thank you for being here. And I'd just start out by saying, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe your family, where you grew up, and something like that.
Hi guys, I'm Brooklyn. I've met quite a few of you, and I'm just really thankful for all the kindness that you guys have given me. You guys are really sweet, and I'm really excited to know more about you guys. And the ones I don't know yet, I'm excited to know you. But my family's actually online watching right now, so you guys can say hi to them. Hi. But I actually was born in Washington State, in Marysville. I grew up there kind of until I was 7, and then we moved to Arizona, and when I was 7. And so my family resides still in Arizona. My parents are divorced though, so I've had 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays, two houses, 2 everything. But that's been cool, and that's been really fun. And I love my family a lot. I have a great stepmom, and my parents are just amazing, and my grandparents are great as well. My brother's graduating high school, so I don't know if anyone else is graduating high school. I know there's a couple people in here. My brother's in the same boat as you guys, so he'll be graduating in 3 weeks or something. So that's exciting for my family, but yeah.
Now you are going to be working with our kids. What's something that you really enjoyed about your childhood and being a kid? You kind of are still a kid in a lot of ways, but what did you enjoy about being a kid?
Yeah, I enjoyed a lot of good things about being a kid. And the one cool thing about living in Washington, we had a cul-de-sac, and so I lived on a cul-de-sac, and it was actually every kid's dream. I always say I lived every kid's dream. And the reason why is because in Washington, in the cul-de-sac, every house that I lived next to, every kid was my age. And so we were all playing every single day after school. And it was just a fun thing. And we all happened to be Christians. And so every family in that cul-de-sac, we all almost all of us went to the same church. So it was really cool. For me, it was an everyday adventure. And you can imagine the 4th of July is but it was I remember, and it was a very vivid thing. That was really fun. And then moving to Arizona, I didn't really have a good start after I was 7. Going to Arizona, it was kind of rough because I was missing Washington. But in my middle school days, it was really fun because I also had an everyday adventure with my best friends. And I don't know, to me, it's always been an everyday adventure, and that's just what I like.
Very good. Now, at some point in your life, you gave your life to Christ. Tell us kind of what led up to that moment and how the Lord has helped you to grow closer to Him.
Yeah, this is where it kind of takes the dark turn. But I had a lot of mental issues from moving from Washington to Arizona.
I could see that.
I mean, I think you would imagine, right? And I was 7 years old, so I was super young. And then my parents' divorce was also really hard on me, and there was just a lot of spiritual warfare as well that I didn't know I had until literally last year. Last year, God revealed it to me. But there was just a lot of combination of things, and I just ended up harboring a lot of emotional issues inside of my heart, and I didn't know what it was. And so I just kind of had this message of I have to just tap it down, don't show weakness, don't show any emotion, or that's bad. And so kind of had that unconscious message. And so I was well, fine then, I'll just compartmentalize all my emotions and act like everything's fine, when nothing is fine at all. But that's what I did, and that was my coping mechanism, was to just bury everything else down. And so after my parents divorced and we moved to Arizona, it was hard, and I think I definitely rebelled against them by not following God. And I just was I'm just not going to follow God because they took me away from all my childhood and all these things, and I'm really mad about it. And so I just was I'm not going to follow God. And so I just completely denounced Him. And then middle school happened, and of course, you have fights with your parents, when you're younger, and and so I had a lot of fights with my mom, I had a lot of fights with my dad. It was very much a turmoil household all the time. And so when I was in middle school, middle school, especially being a girl in middle school, oh, it's hard, the hormones and everything, and then it's horrible. And so I buried, a lot of things came out, and I ended up developing a lot of like depression, a lot of like suicidal thoughts, suicidal tendencies, and just a lot of anxiety. And I had like great best friends and everything, but there was just a huge fight that had happened one day with my best friend and I, and then like I wasn't having a good time with my mom, and just all these emotional things were happening. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to like, not live here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. And so I was on medication for a lot of mental health stuff, and I just was like, well, I'm just going to try to like take these medication to just, go to heaven earlier. And so I tried that, and then that night when I had done that, I woke up and I just remember praying to God for the first time in like years, and I was like, I don't want to die. Like, what am I doing? Like, God, I know you're real. I think you're real, but like, I just don't want to die anymore. And like, I regret this. And it was just terrifying. It was a terrifying experience. And I was like, God, please help me. And randomly out of nowhere, I saw myself out of my body, and I just was like, I was in my mom's bedroom, for context. I had peed my own bedroom, so I went into my mom's bedroom, and my mom has high ceilings, and so I remember I just like, I saw myself out of my body. I was just floating around, and I saw my body lying there, and my mom like sleeping next to me. And I had 2 dogs. I still have them. They're great dogs, but they were super young at that point. One of them's named Angel, and we named her Angel because we used to see her like look up into like the ceiling, like finding things, and we're like, I think she's staring at angels. And so Angel was looking at me when I was like up in the ceiling, sort of. My other dog, Maverick, he is a very feeling-oriented dog, and he could tell something was off and went to my body, and he put like my arm over his head, and my body just lied there very still. And I remember thinking like, what the heck is going on? I was like, why am I here? But I'm not here. And I just was like, what? And then randomly the ceiling above me turned into like this like bright light, and like it was the brightest light like you've ever seen. And I just remember being like, whoa, that's really bright. And then I just felt like hands on my back. I didn't know what they were. I looked behind me, nothing was there. It was just all brightness. And like these hands were just like pushing me like towards the bright light. And I just was like, whoa. And then randomly I just felt like this like warmth and like joy and like peace that I've never felt before. It was like a love that like no one can ever feel on earth. Like I can't even describe that love to you. It's so warmth, like it's in your soul. Like it's literally in you. And I just was like, I felt it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what is this? And the hands were pushing me. And then in the distance, I saw these like tall golden gates. And like those gates were like super tall. And I just remember like it was like I was coming close to it, and it was coming close to me. It's like we were meeting each other in the middle. It was really interesting. And suddenly on top of the golden gates, I saw like thousands of people, and they all were like cheering for me. Like I won like the biggest football game in the universe. It was really weird because I didn't know these people, but they were cheering for me. And I was like, that's for me? And like I looked behind me, no one's behind me. And I was like, whoa. And so I got to the gates, and then I just had this like conscious realization of like, I'm not supposed to be here yet. Like, I don't know why. And then randomly, I just heard this like loud booming voice, and I didn't know it was God at the time, but I heard this voice say to me like, you will be okay. And then I woke up, and I was back in my body, and my dog was right where I saw him, on my arm and everything. And I was like, what? An Angel? It was really weird. She's a weird dog, but she's really cool. She was staring right directly into my eyes. Like it was really interesting. But you can tell she was watching the whole time. But that was like the first real encounter I had with the Lord. But I woke up the next morning, and I was like paralyzed, like my body could not move. And so I had to tell my mom like what I tried to do the night before. And so she took me to the hospital. But it wasn't until that happened in like May. That wasn't until November when I had given my life to Christ, and it was in my room, shockingly. It wasn't at church. I had a huge fight with my math teacher in front of everybody, and it was embarrassing. And I was like, I need to get my life together. And I just was like, you know what? I've tried everything, seriously everything. Nothing's worked. And my grandma had given me like a Bible when I was like in 6th grade. And I just was like, maybe this is the thing I should do. And so I picked up the Bible, and like, I always say, like, I've never been able to put it down since. Like, I genuinely mean that, though. I don't know if you guys have ever any similar testimonies, but like, I literally picked up the Bible, opened a page, and literally, like, God, like, took me. Like, I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but like, I swear that does happen to like people's stories. You know, everyone's different, but like, I could not get my eyes off of it. It was super weird, and like, that's how I knew like God wanted me there, and he just was waiting for me to come home. And you know, of course, he's a gentleman, so he wasn't going to force it on me. But that was and then I think a couple weeks later or something, my dad happens to. We were at my dad's house, and my dad. I remember, I don't know, he's probably watching right now, but I don't think he even knows this, but I remember one day I woke up, it was a Sunday morning, and, you know, normal thing, we didn't really do much on the weekends, we just kind of like hung out, whatever, but I remember seeing my dad standing at the railing of our house, and he just like stood there for like maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And I remember thinking like, why is he just standing there staring off into space? And I just was like, that's weird. And then like, my dad's a very go person. So I was just like, what is he doing? And then like maybe 2 minutes later, he comes back into like my room, my brother's around, and he's like, we're gonna go to church. And then right down the road was Hillsong Church. And Hillsong was like, in like I think Phoenix, Mesa, Arizona. That was their main campus in Arizona. And he was like, we're going to go to church. And I was like, okay. I was like, sounds good. Okay. I didn't want to go. I was still not used to church yet, but I was very much like open to it, of course. And so he was like, let's go, and you're going to go to the youth. And I was like, no, I want to stay with the adults. I don't want to go to the youth. And he was like, no, you're going to go to the youth. And I was like, fine. And so, yeah. And so we get there, and I go to the youth, and like everyone just welcomed me with open arms. And I was like, whoa, I've never been loved like this before by people who don't even know me. And what's crazy, I got a friend group there, and we're still friends to this day. And those young adult or youth pastors that were there, I'm also still in contact with. And God just like took it from there, you know, without even me wanting it.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. God's given you a lot of joy, Brooklyn, because just joy kind of comes out of you. Now, you are connected with a Christian conference center that's very dear to many of our hearts called Mount Hermon. So tell us a little bit about what you do there and how you got connected to Mount Hermon.
Yeah. So it's one of those other funny things. When I gave my life to Christ in my room, the Lord started giving me a lot of dreams and revelations, like prophetic words. Like, I swear to you, I had prophetic dreams every single night. And I have a whole, like, I should have brought it, but it's in Arizona, actually, now that I remember. I have a whole, like, journal of dreams that were written in every single page. And God just, like, outpoured his spirit onto me. And so one of those things that God had spoken to me, like, when I first became a Christian was, like, you know, I'm going to, like, make your testimony, like, my own, and, like, I'm going to use that, and you're going to be an example. And I was like, okay, whatever that looks like. But there's just a lot of other things that he spoke along those same lines. But one of the main things, that started happening, and then I started high school a little bit later. And then throughout high school, I kind of lost the prophetic dreams. He didn't give them to me as much anymore, but it was every so frequently, you know. But I was always very discerning of, like, what was going on. Like, I always felt very deeply, like, when there was, like, you know, demonic spiritual warfare happening, and I still feel that way now, but it's not as strong. But I was very much like, okay, whatever. But But there was one time, it was like my sophomore year of high school, and my sophomore year of high school, this will show you how young I am, was when COVID happened. So I am 20 right now. I'll be 21 in September. But my sophomore year of high school was COVID 2020. And I had a great friend group. God had blessed me with like amazing friends. And it was something I'd been praying for. I remember like interceding for this actually one day because the Lord put on my heart to intercede. And great friend group. I had a best friend at the time. She was my first best friend that was a Christian, and her and I were both like going for the Lord, you know. And she knew some people that I didn't know. One of them happened to really like her a lot and was very sad because she didn't like him back. And so him and I became good friends. Long story short, junior year of high school for me, that same friend is a year older than me, so he was graduating, and he was like, oh, I'm gonna be going off to a camp this summer. And I was like, you going to a camp? Because like my friend, he was super shy, super insecure, would never step out of his comfort zone, like was only friends because I was friends with him. Like it was very much like a funny thing. And I was like, you're gonna do that? And he's like, yeah, it's in California. And I was like, what? I was like, you are going to a different state for a camp? And I was like low-key making fun of him. I was like, that's not like you. But he went for the summer and then came back and like was a completely changed person. And that camp was Mount Hermon. And I just was like, I want to know what changed him. I know it was God, but like, what about that camp changed him that God wanted him there for? And so then I woke up February of my senior year, and I just randomly heard the phrase in my spirit, you should be a camp counselor. And I immediately knew, I was like, if this is God, he's gonna repeat it, because he repeats things that he wants us to know. So I just was like, okay, God, if this is you, you'll repeat it. So I went throughout my day and randomly heard it in math class, you should be a camp counselor. I was in choir, you should be a camp counselor. And I was like, okay, I hear you. I was like, sounds like a plan. And so I was thinking about all the camps that I know. I only know two. One of them, Mount Hermon, this other one I went to when I was like a freshman. And I was like, I don't like the one I went to when I was a freshman, but I also like this one in California because it's not in Arizona. I was like, oh, I can get away? I was like, sounds like a plan. And so instead of doing math homework, I went to the library and texted my friend for 2 hours and was like, hey, can you tell me about the camp and all that stuff? And he responded for 2 hours straight with me and told me all the information I needed. And I went home that night and I was like, Mom, I'm going to do this. And she was like, okay. I was like, okay. And so then I worked there in summer of 2022. That was my first summer as a Redwood and Ponderosa camp counselor-esque, but mostly a lifeguard. My main job was lifeguard. And then, I came back home, and my friend ended up living there, staying there past the summer. Went back home and was not actually planning on coming back for summer of 2023. A lot of other things had occurred back in Arizona, and I was like, maybe the Lord wants me to stay there. But I knew deep down that wasn't right, but for the time I thought it was right because my circumstances were telling me I should stay. But no, actually, a lot of things went down back in Arizona, and I just was like really heartbroken over a lot of things that started happening in my life. One of them, I was going through a really hard breakup, and that was a big part of why I wanted to stay home, and just a lot of other things. And then we broke up, and that was like, oh, well, God obviously doesn't want me here anymore. And so I was like, well, I'm going to come back. And my best friend, actually, funny enough, she was going through a similar breakup. They both had the same name, and they were both roommates. And so her and I were like, whoa, we're feeling this together, like, truly. And so it bonded us. And then she actually came up to me one night and was like, Brooklyn, I just need to go serve at a camp. And I was like, that's funny, because I was not thinking about going back to Mount Hermon at that point, but it had crossed my mind one time before that. And then she mentioned it, and I was like, okay, God. And I was like, if she says Mount Hermon, I'm going to literally die. And so she was like, I want to serve at your camp, Mount Hermon. And I was like, okay. And she was like, I'm going to apply tomorrow. And I was like, oh. And she was like, you should do it too. What are you going to do this summer? And I was like, you're right. And so, I applied, and then I worked the Adventures ropes course, and And then I just knew the Lord wanted me to stay there past the summer. I knew it before I even went to camp over the summer. And so I applied for housing, and Abigail, my friend over here, Abigail was actually my roommate during the summer of 2023, and God totally blessed me with Abigail as well. I remember literally being like, oh, I just really would because you're with one roommate the whole summer, and I was like, oh, I'm praying for my roommate, and I just knew the girl that was going to be there was going to be a really good friend of mine. I just knew it in my spirit. And then she also ended up being from Arizona, and she was going through similar stuff I was going through. And I was like, God, you're so cool how you put us together because you knew what we both needed. And obviously we've stayed friends past the summer, and she's just a really great friend of mine. So Abigail is a part of that little testimony as well. And then I am going to sing just a song that what? When I was becoming, when I gave my life to Christ in my room and started going to Hillsong, there was a song that really stuck out to me. It was called Sinking Deep by Hillsong. And so it's part of my testimony as well. Yeah. Standing here in your presence, in a grace so relentless, I am one by perfect love, wrapped within the arms of heaven, in the peace that lasts forever, sinking deep in mercy. See, I'm wide awake, drawing closer by grace, and all in my heart is yours. All fear removed, I breathe you in and lean into your love. Oh, when I'm lost, you pursue me. Lift my head to see your glory, Lord of all. So beautiful. Here in you I find shelter, captivated by the splendor of your face. My sacred place, I'm wide awake, drawing closer by grace, and all in my heart is yours. All fear removed, I breathe you in and lean into your love. Your love so deep is washing over me. Your face is all I seek. You are my everything. Jesus Christ, you are my one desire. Lord, hear my only cry, to know you all in my life. Love so deep, it's washing over me. Your face is all I seek. You are my everything. Jesus Christ, you are my one desire. Lord, hear my only cry, to know you all in my life. I'm is yours. All fear removed, I breathe you in and lean into your love. Oh, your love.
Amen. Welcome, Brooklyn.